What we're doing as a company is really democratizing access to private aviation. There's been a huge transition of people that are starting to fly private more, and we're using the world's safest, most efficient jet. And so between these two things, we have a remarkable business that is radically changing the world of private aviation. From cost to experience, we just get people where they're going faster, and we're able to land at 5,400 airports in America versus 37.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am stoked to talk to a fellow pilot, a fellow dad, Brett Harmeling. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did.
I usually ask before we start recording, and I forgot. But really looking forward to talking to Brett. He is a father of one with one in the oven, so really looking forward to kind of digging into that. So congrats on the one in the oven. By the time this comes out, who knows? We may have a brand new baby around. So, Brett, if you can, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family, and then tell us about your businesses.
Of course. So thanks everyone for tuning in. My name is Brett Harmeling. I live in Houston, Texas. I have an amazing, beautiful bride, Lucia. We've been married for almost 5 years. And then I have a 2.5-year-old son with another son on the way. So we are living full on right now, navigating the journey of being entrepreneurs. My wife also has her own business, and we work as a team with her business in mind. So Happy Life Labs is one of my companies, and what it is a wellness collective, connecting the world's most premier people, products, and places so that wherever you're at on your journey with health, whether you're a Formula One world champion or just trying to, turn the corner on, healing, recovering, losing weight, whatever the thing is, we have a company that introduces different biotechnologies and optimization tools to help you live a better life. And so it's been a really cool thing. And then I'm heavily involved in a private aviation concept that is going to disrupt the way that people move and travel, which is really exciting. And so I'm sure we'll get more into that on the call, but those are the two things I'm currently really invested in. I'm also a serial entrepreneur and invested in quite a few different companies. And so I have interest in those companies. Some of them are controlling and some of them are managing, but at the same time, I love philanthropy, and so I put my money where my mouth is and serve on several boards. One being Hives for Heroes here in Houston, which connects veterans to beekeepers, and apitherapy and working with bees is very therapeutic. And then part of my background is in anti-human trafficking, and so I serve with an organization called the Aerial Recovery Group, and so we do humanitarian disaster relief, as well as anti-human trafficking. They kind of work in tandem. And so just really grateful to use the resources, talents, and skills that I've kind of learned over the course of my brief lifespan so far, and putting them to work.
That sounds awesome. I think we're going to have a lot to talk about there, given my previous experiences. So your wellness side of the house, do you help work with slightly overweight dads who are podcasters and business owners? I seem to fit that mold rather well. So,
yes, yeah. The real thing, we should not be sitting, but I did get a lot of movement in this morning, so I'm actually resting right now. But at the same time, sitting is probably one of the top things that you can do to guarantee your chance of developing health problems. So, getting yourself like a walking treadmill for your desk is really a great option.
Yep, I've got one sitting right there. It's literally right there, my treadmill desk, and I almost never. It seems to be holding more papers than it does people at the moment. So,
mine's right
yeah. There you go. But no, that's awesome. I am looking forward to kind of digging into a lot of this stuff. So before we do that, though, I kind of want to learn a little bit about how you got into where you are right now. How old are you, Brett?
I'm 36.
36. Okay. So let's rewind quite a bit back to, let's say, 30 years ago or so, and kind of learn a little bit about what it was like for you growing up. Maybe a bit about your dad, maybe even your dad's dad. One of the reasons I love to ask this question, so you can think about this as we're going through it, is we tend to either run away from or run towards exactly what we saw until something else changes our brain on how we're looking at it. So just kind of learning about where you came from may help me understand a little bit more about who you are and why you do what you do. So if you can, let's rewind and go and tell us a little bit about who you were growing up and who your parents were.
Yeah, great question. I'm just grateful to have been raised in such a strong family. My dad and his parents and even my great grandparents have all been critically important in the kind of development evolution of where I am I kind of take it. I kind of like look at my last name and I take responsibility for it. I'm like, okay, I'm the legacy of the next generation of my family. Because in some capacity, I'm somewhat of a miracle kid. My parents tried for many years. There's a 10-year gap between me and my sister. And so I was the first boy of the family. And so it's kind of like a big deal because the Harmeling name runs like all the way back to like the first boat, Christopher Columbus days. And so I grew up in this, long story short, I grew up in this small little Dutch village. I'm pretty much 100% Dutch and just, rooted in the heritage and hardworking, disciplined family environment. And I think that's those characteristics, hardworking, discipline, growing up on a farm, heritage, you're always around family. When you have structure in your life and you're a kid and you're crazy like I was, it's really important that you have things that you have to do, like go to church, go to Bible study, chores, because if you don't, you derail. I would have totally been an addict or I guarantee you I would have ended up down a bad path because I'm hyper curious and I love to try new things. And so I had this healthy level of fear for my dad and my grandfather and respect. Like fear is the same as respect for me. Right. And so I saw the life that they built, and my dad was in, he was in warehousing essentially and farming and his whole life, and so they did cheese, and so my dad was doing like massive volumes of cheese, like 15 million pounds a year through the warehouse. Yeah, right. Typical Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of cheese, so I need to know your family very well. Let's do
this. Yes, and so what I saw is just my dad was always hardworking, and that's also how I got wounded unintentionally, right? So it's like you can be mad at your parents for like hurting you or not raising you, like, oh, you should have done this. It's like,
yeah,
I just say my parents did the best they could with what they had, period. Mm-hmm. So no harm, no foul, right? But what I saw was a huge gap, a generational gap, and an opportunity, like in ways of in old school thinking. Like, I started to see patterns for like holidays, for instance, and I'm like, why do we even do that? That's just so dumb. It's bad food. It's like, why are we still doing that tradition? Like, we're poisoning ourselves. Now, back in the day, to be fair, like the food that people used to cook was much different than in today's chaotic reality of navigating a grocery store. But I say all that because I have a lot of respect and love for my dad. And, but as a little boy, all I wanted was to like feel loved in a way that I couldn't ask for. And when I say that, what I mean is like, I wanted my dad to hug me and to like look me in the eyes and tell me that he loved me, and like physical touch versus just kind of like knowing that he loved me. I was like looking for more. But once again, going back to the fear and respect conversation, like I was also navigating like, oh my God, like how do I ask my dad tell my dad I need like a hug? That sounds like really like kind of a little too touchy feely for my dad,
Yeah.
And for the people that know me, like I'm very yogic and loving, and I embody like quite a bit of feminine energy, even though I'm, heterosexual white Catholic male. So
yeah, with a beard, a nice beard, no less. So
with a beard.
So when your dad was growing up, was it something that was there not really any affection with his dad either? Or was that just not the kind of relationship growing up on the farm, that type of thing, that it was just more of a much more masculine energy that did not like really foster that type of relationship?
Yeah, it's the kind of energy where you're like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you don't have time to go blow your nose. You like figure out how to blow your nose without a Kleenex, or you go to the bathroom, or like whatever it is. And so it was like almost performance-based love. It was almost like, oh, if I scored a goal in soccer, for instance, then I felt like my dad would be very proud of me, and I could like seek that validation and love. Where I was like, hey man, like, what if I don't score a goal and I'm a total failure at athletics? Like, are you still going to love me? Because my brother was a pretty successful athlete, and like he's 2 years younger than me, but he was also bigger and stronger and like just more likable. Because I was like that crazy weird kid that I was like got in trouble for like asking questions that I was just curious about or doing things. And I was like high energy. So I was like kind of annoying, always trying to have a girlfriend, I just was like on the chase and for something more. And so until I moved to Chicago really is when college, I got myself into a pretty great school called Carthage. Until then is like the first time that I felt like accepted. Like, I'm like, oh, I can be myself. I can breathe. I never for the first 18 years of my life, I never really felt like I could be myself.
Interesting. Just because you didn't think that you were going to be loved for being yourself? Is that
just felt kind of like a black sheep of the family? I was like doing kind of different things. I was like getting in trouble, pushing the limits, questioning people. And like, now in today's world, like that's what I teach to all the people that I coach, mentor, lead. When I do keynote speaking, I'm like getting people to tap into their own superpower. Like that's what it's all about. It's like that thing that you think that makes you weird. That's like your superpower. That's the thing you need to do more of. And that's what people love, because nobody can take that from you and nobody can like replicate it the way that you can. And so I just challenge people to tap more into that creative potential. And I'm even learning how to step into mine in new ways continuously.
So you mentioned a few things as far as like, your parents doing the best they could with what they had, and or the best they knew how to do. I think it's kind of how you said that. As you were growing up, it probably didn't feel that way. So at what point in your life did you kind of realize that they were doing the best that they could, or that they did the best they could?
I went through this program, men's self-leadership type thing called the New Warrior Training Adventure. It's like a healthy initiation for men. And it was in Chicago, and I was, it was 2012. And we did this Carl Jung's shadow work. And so this shadow work is a way where you look at the things that you hide, repress, and deny about yourself. Mm-hmm. And through that body of work in like really strategically facilitated processes and bioenergetic work, like, getting anger and rage and sadness out of your tissues through processes, I was able to see a side of myself, a version of myself that I never realized that I had inside of me. And from that moment moving forward, I kind of like stepped into my manhood, and I'm like, you know what? Like, thank you, Dad. Like, I love you. And I'm like, I'm going to take everything I learned from you, but I'm going to add to it. And I'm going to take total responsibility for, raising my kids and my family and being the hero of my own family. Mm-hmm. in a way that I think is meaningful and impactful. Because I missed so much time with my dad because he was always working. And I think a lot of that had to do with him trying to please his father. And I don't know, that'd be a good conversation for us to have, but I felt like that's the transfer. That was the transfer. It was like my dad's dad. My dad was seeking love and validation from his dad by working and doing things. Yeah. It was never like just being with each other, or, like I remember we went to like Disney World with the grandparents like one time, and it was like the one trip, but I was so young I hardly remembered it. Yeah. I was like, I want to create more of those experiences with my family and and one of the reasons I'm really attracted to being wealthy and completely financial abundance is because I want to be able to like give my parents a quality of life that they don't even know is possible. Mm-hmm.
No, I love that, and be able to give back to your parents in a way that's like what they did set you up to be where you are, whether, all the good and all the bad combined, like sets you up to be where you are. And it's the least we could do for our parents in the process. Right. So, have you had any of these types of conversations with your dad? You mentioned like it'd be good to kind of understand why your dad did what he did. Was it for his dad? But how about the feelings that you've had about what it was like for you growing up? Have you opened up with him at all about any of that?
Yes. Yeah, we've had these conversations, and there's amazing things that happen when you approach a difficult conversation. Like at first I was scared to have it. It took like years. I waited, and then I waited, and then I just realized, like, what's at risk for me telling my dad how I feel now? Like, I'm a man. If he stops talking to me because I, acknowledge something that hurt me in the past, like, it's not me to shame. It's not like a shame thing. It's like, hey, I've had this self-realization that I'm wounded, and I just wanted to thank you for everything you did. And I'm just letting you know, like, it hurt me, and I love you, and I want to move. I want to, feel loved by you in a different way. And that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, there's no, like, he doesn't owe me anything. Like, it's not like I'm expecting him to change or see anything different in me. I'm just like, hey, this is my experience.
Yeah, for me, like watching my dad, like the way he acts now is so different than when I was a kid. Like so different. Like I get way more hugs now. Like every time I go to their house, like I get a big hug when I get there. I get a big hug when I leave. It's growing up, it was one of those that my dad was working all the time. And oftentimes he worked nights, so he'd be sleeping when I was awake, and working when I was asleep. And it was like, all right, well, if he was even there, at the time, because he may have been elsewhere doing something. So now I get to see such a different side of my dad and who he is and what it's like for him. But to your point, me learning a lot more about my dad and what it was like for him growing up helped me learn an unbelievable amount about who he is and what tools he came to the table with, and what tools he was really missing. That just there was no way for him to learn some of the things that I wish he would have been able to do for me, because he didn't have that opportunity for him growing up. Nobody even told him that was a tool he should have in his toolbox. He didn't know that was an option. Hugs and kisses were not a thing he ever experienced. I'll tell you that. So. But no, I'm glad that you had those conversations, and I encourage anybody listening to have those conversations with your dad. Like, and if you're an older dad and you have sons who are adults, then have those conversations with your sons. Let them know kind of who you are, and be a little bit more open with the fact that of where you came from. So because you mentioned something, Brett, a little bit ago about the hurt that you received, right? And it was almost just in a passing way, but we all have received some sort of hurt growing up, and we're all going to provide some sort of hurt to our kids. And it's a matter of trying to establish what it was, and how we can fix our own previous hurt, and how we can fix the current hurt that we're providing, we're giving to our kids without realizing it. Sometimes it's a conversation like this where we realize it comes out and be like, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that to my son or my daughter or whatever. And sometimes it's that conversation with our dads. But so as you mentioned that you wanted to take responsibility for your own family, right? And realizing after that experience, and I think you said it was 2012, like, okay, well, when I have my kids, I want to take charge of what I think that looks like. So what does that look like for you now, right? You've got one kid and one on the way. What does it look like for you now as far as what that means to lead your family the way that you want to? What is, I warned you before we started that one of the kids would probably show up, and here we are. But what does that mean to you right now?
What it means to me right now is spending as much time with my kids, quality time with my kids that I have, that I'm able to, and then to create experiences. There's a story in a book that Jim Shields wrote that's really powerful, and it creates this perspective, and it's called 18 Summers, and it's like, you literally get, and he also has the family boardroom. So it's like, treat your family like a business, like work on it. Like if it's not going well, fix it. Like, are you going to let it bankrupt? And I think one of the biggest issues that we're facing specifically in America is the broken family. And one of the many beautiful reasons that I've decided to become Catholic was that there's a kind of a non-negotiable clause about being divorced, right?
Yeah.
And so that works well for someone like me that has curiosity about, like, well, what if, like, what if we could? And so there is no what ifs, right? It is what it is. And so me being able to provide for my family in a way where I'm able to actually be like the nucleus of the family versus like, I'm like my wife, who does an unbelievably extraordinary job of being the mom and nurturing and loving, and just like I tell her almost daily, like, I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like so impressed. And so that's a good testament, because like that's why I married my wife, because I knew that she would make remarkable partner to grow into life with, to grow through whatever we go through in life. Yeah. And then to become better humans in the process. Like I'm never going to be too smart or too wise to like continue growing and learning for my kids even, right? And I think, whether we're an adult or a kid, we all have a shared human experience that's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And we have basic human needs that need to get met. And when those human needs get derailed, people get hurt.
Yeah.
That's when the anger and the sadness and all that stuff comes up. And it's like how to teach your amazing kids how to deal with that stuff so that they can use it as power, right? Use it like, oh, I feel this anger or sadness coming up. How can I turn this anger or sadness, which is actually just energy that's trapped inside you, how can I transform this into something powerful and shift it into the right lane so that I can actually respond versus react to the situation at hand?
Yeah, the respond versus react is something I've talked about multiple times on here, and I absolutely love that you brought that up because it will completely demolish the feeling of a child, where they're at, what they think about themselves, what they think about the experience they just had. If we, react versus respond, and that, man, oh man, my kid just stole my my little back massager thing, little massage gun, and he's using it on his little sister, and she's loving it. She's it's vibrating like crazy, but there she goes.
I can't even hear it.
Oh my goodness, it's hilarious. But I mean the ability to truly respond versus react takes so much practice. Like, however you, obviously your oldest is 2.5 years old, but you seem to have put a lot of work into this before you even started having kids. So how do you look at responding versus reacting, and how are you trying to apply that even now with a 2.5-year-old?
Yeah. So I think women are better than men. I think men have a blow off valve, and once something goes off and it's not like how they expect it to be, it doesn't go well. And so the first thing that I've trained myself to do is to just take like 1 to 3 conscious breaths before I actually make say anything or do anything. Even if it's like I need to do something fast, it's like the whole Navy SEALs saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And so making sure it happens in a good way, in a clean way. So, we're going to wound our kids, right? It's going to happen, and it's almost necessary for the evolution and progression of life, but we can cut them cleanly and we can teach them along the way. And I also have been really honest about owning my own, I apologize to my kid, I say, hey, I'm sorry, buddy, that I reacted the way I did. I love you so much. You're my best friend, And so I'm already creating this relationship, and whether he understands it or not doesn't matter, because it's the pure energy and embodiment of truth that he feels from me more than any words that I say, which is why the vibrational frequency of authenticity is been studied now pretty frequently, and it's 1,000 times more powerful than the frequency of love. So you can say, I love you, and that's pretty cool. It feels good. But when you say it with authenticity, I will die for you and do anything for you because you're my son, that sounds way cooler and better and feels amazing compared to just I love you.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that for sure. Boy, what is up, little lady? You want to come say hi on the camera now?
And then when I think back to the what we talked about with, hey, when I think back to going back to the dad conversation, and I talk about being wounded and whatnot, and I'm and that kind of thing, and this hero's journey. We leave the village, we get these, we go through this initiation process, we learn something about ourselves, we go through these we go through this mastery about it, we learn how to implement it and integrate it, and then we bring it back to our community. It's called the hero's journey, and it just continues in these cycles. And when you're on this journey and you know where you're at, then you can use it as a tool to really provide invaluable insight to your family. And when I'm who hurt me the most? It's really my own expectations about how life is supposed to go. That's who hurt me the most, is me. And so I have like I said, my dad doesn't owe me an apology. He doesn't owe me anything. Nobody does, because I take 100% responsibility for my experience of life.
Yeah. And I think that our expectation is really what results in, the frustration or the happiness, right? If we expected some sort of outcome and it didn't turn out that way, well, then we get upset about it, right? But if we go into it just knowing that I can control me in the situation, but I can't control anything else. And so I can't control what the outcome actually is in the situation. I can't control the end of it. So, the quicker we could realize that lowering our expectation actually helps us not get that frustration and not get to that level. It's a game changer for sure. because the delta, I forgot who it was. I was talking to somebody, but it's the delta between what happened and what you were expecting to happen creates some level of emotion, right? So like if you were expecting to fail miserably and you did an amazing job, like you're elated. But if you're expecting to do an amazing job and you did poorly, holy gracious, can that just destroy your feelings about where you're at? So, but no, like bringing that up is extremely important. I think I try to talk about that even with my kids, right? Like you're expecting, I was talking to you before we started recording, like my son's a big golfer, my 9-year-old, and he expects to hit 180-yard drives right down the center every single time on the exact square inch of path, like the exact square inch that he wanted to in the middle of the fairway, right? And if he doesn't land on that, then he gets angry. Like, okay, well, if that is your expectation with every single drive, you're going to be very upset after almost every single drive, right? So like trying to adjust that expectation. So how do you work on, as someone who's growing businesses and who obviously, you have expectations and you have expectations for your kids, you have expectations for things, we all do, but how do you manage to set an expectation without having overreactions when we don't hit it? But, because we want to, you've already mentioned multiple, like about wanting to grow these large businesses to be able to support, or to be able to do the things that you wanted to do and be able to provide even your parents with a life that they would have never been able to have, and all of these things. So you have large expectations. So what happens when you shoot that arrow and it misses? Like, how do you keep yourself back on track, on target, making sure that expectation doesn't turn into a reaction?
Yeah. Well, going back to my childhood, I was like, if there's one book or character, people are like, oh, I'm a superhero. Like you have that thought of who you are, and like mine was actually like the little engine that could. Like I just never quit. I've been, through the injuries, through the bullying, through the harassment, through the being weird kid, smaller, singer, like all these crazy things, right? I was just always navigating, and so I believe in moonshots, and so my goals, like the things that I'm doing, are like multi-billion-dollar projects, right? These are not like, oh, if I fail, it will be bad. It'll be like, huge opportunity loss. And so what you're not changing, you're choosing, is the truth.
Okay.
And so if your son, for instance, doesn't hit that spot on the fairway and repeatedly and continues to get angry, then you have to change. Then you have to shift your expectations.
Yeah.
Right. However, it's a realistic thing to be able to focus on something. It's not like, how do I put this? Like, focus isn't being perfect, it's being present. And so when you're present to a situation, if you don't get perfect, whether that's money or a perfect golf shot, but you're present, you'll feel gratitude. Like Hurricane Beryl happened this week. We just got power back. I have a lot of things to complain about, but we made the most of it. We got close as a family. We say, what do we do in times of adversity, in times of, hardship, in times of chaos? What do the Harmelings do? What do we do? We're a unit now. We're an eternal unit. So as a business, how do the Harmelings react and respond to disaster and chaos? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it is, you have to ask for what you need, and you need to ask for help. And that's that as I've gained wealth and power, I would say, and authority, it's been harder for me to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because the whole image is, oh, Brett's got it handled. He'll figure it out. He has people everywhere. He knows that he has access to resources and capital and da. But the truth is it doesn't matter if I have that or not. Sometimes just hearing from people means more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's weird because there's that point as you're trying to grow, that you're like, boy, I don't want to ask for help because like that person's so far ahead of me, and I don't feel like, and it's hard to ask for help. And then you start to get successful, and then you're like, well, now if I ask for help, people are going to think that I'm fake and I'm not, doing what. And then you get like even more successful, and it's like, well, now if I ask for help, people are going to think, and it's always focused on what other people are going to think when you ask, as opposed to just going back to the authenticity part of it, just being authentic and say, look, like this is a gap I have, like when you're running a company and you hire an employee, you're asking for help. Right? Hiring an employee is asking for help. Like
Yes.
that's what it is, right? They're filling a gap that you have, and whether it's your skills, whether it's your knowledge, whether it's in your ability, even if you have the capability of doing that job, that's not the highest and best use of your time. So you're asking for help. So in friendships and relationships and where we're going, and like, we're hiring, quote unquote, if we want to think about it. This is the first time I'm really thinking through this, so this could be complete bumpkins. But like by asking that person for help, you're basically saying, hey, I need a new person on my team to assist me with something. Like I don't have this part down, and I need some help. And the people who are looking for that job really know that like when somebody's looking for a job and I'm hiring them, they're excited when I hire them. Like they're happy they have a job. And when somebody asks me for help, I am thrilled to help them out. But yet for some reason, I want to rob other people of that excitement, Like, I don't know why. I want to rob people of that excitement, And so why not ask for help? Like, it feels good to help. So let the other person have that feeling,
Yeah, I love helping too. Like I'm resourceful for sure. And so part of it is just being willing to ask for help and being humble enough to say, hey, this is the situation. This is what I need. The key here, though, Adam, is that we need to be clear on what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, when we ask for things as adults, professionals, dads, executives, whatever your titles are, is we really underestimate the power of clarity.
Yeah.
Like pretty much if you had a direct ask, like I need $1 million for this and this is why, it would come into your life immediately. But there's this lack of clarity and transparency around the why for a lot of people. And then there's this energy of expectation, and that cuts it off immediately because people can feel it. People are like, why do you say that, Brett? I'm like, it's because I, as an energy practitioner for the last decade now, that's like how long I've been an energy healer, right? I have witnessed people have transformational breakthroughs just by shifting their mindset.
Oh yeah.
And it's like what you're not changing, you're choosing, right? And so, and if nothing changes, nothing changes, nothing changes. And these are so simple things to think about. But if we get trapped in the belief that we can't become something more because we are limited by our family or money or whatever the thing is, that's what this whole shadow work is about, by the way. It's about awareness. It's about acknowledging the things that are literally holding you back from being your best self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because once you have awareness to those things, there's nothing that has power over you.
So I want to kind of apply this to being a dad. As your sons start to grow up, right? And you're having conversations with them about some of this stuff, right? So you have done a lot of work up front again on yourself, and I'm assuming you're going to have a plan on how to kind of apply that work to your kids. So how do you get your kids to kind of think through some of these things? Like, have you put much thought to how you're going to talk to your kids about working through this stuff mentally? It's how to, like the, if you're choosing, as the old Rush song, like if you, is it Rush? You still have made a choice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, type of thing, right? Like if you're choosing to stay the same, then that's still your choice. Like your choice is to stay the same. So, how do you intend to talk to your kids about this to make sure that they're moving the right direction and changing things to a positive direction?
I think the best way to set your kids free is to get them learning in ways that inspire them and help engage in their creative thinking. I feel like the school systems that we have in today's world really limit kids' belief systems and ways that they think about like actual reality. I mean, even myself, I just got my MBA from Rice University in 2022. And I'm just going through that experience. It was just like really real, even though it was based on Socratic method, which is, hey, Adam, do you want super speed or super strength? And tell us why. Mm-hmm. Neither answer is right, but convince us why one is right. And then at the end of that experiment, we'd, go around the circle and then everyone would say like why they choose what they chose. Then you could change your answer based on being convinced by other people. So it's like thought leadership and critical thinking, which are like, it's kind of a lost art in our society, honestly. And so there's a really good documentary out right now that you should watch with your 9-year-old, by the way. It's called Finding Joe. It's free. It's on YouTube. It's called Finding Joe, and it is about Carl Jung's hero's journey and about the masks that we have to wear and like the 4 fundamental emotions of humans, joy, fear, anger, and sadness. And so these are the 4 fundamental things, and all the time you're feeling one of those things or several of them. And if you know how you're feeling, then you know what you need to do to change it. And if you believe, and part of it is teaching your kids to take 100%, even though, we're their leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
Teaching them to take 100% responsibility for their actions and for their life. And challenging them like a game, gamifying it. And all the things I'm saying right now are like my beliefs is what I'm going to do because I have never done it, but I did get my undergrad in education, and so I do have a passion for teaching. And so, even in the classrooms, that was my first job out of college. Is when I was teaching, I think I inspired a lot of kids that were younger because I was like, ask a simple question about like, what if it's not? What if that wasn't true? Then what would you do? And it was like, oh my gosh, Mr. Harmeling has, believes that there's always a third option. And when you believe that, then you never feel stuck. And that's amazing. And you feel free. Because I grew up thinking, oh, there's A or B. Like you're either a Christian or you're not, Yeah. And this way of structure, and some structure is healthy, but it's really, and then the most important thing is I think for being a dad is creating the stable foundation so that no matter what happens to my kid, he knows that he can come to me first and feel safe. So bringing psychological safety into the family and into all of my businesses. Because when people feel like they can't be themselves fully, it's over. You're cutting people off at the head, right? Because you're like limiting all of their creativity and all of their ideology. And I'm talking like having your accountant in your vision sessions, because they're going to say some stuff that's probably horrible, but they might give you a piece of gold because their brain works a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the psychological safety is massively important. I think especially for kids, right? For them to be able to feel safe about how they're saying things and what they're thinking about, and it will help take away even the silly things, some of the taboo things, right? There's no such thing as taboo if we're just able to talk about it, right? Like people always, when we were growing up, and even still, like you don't talk about, money and politics and that type of stuff, religion, right? And it's like, well, why the heck not? Like we should be able to talk about anything and have that psychological safety to know that like it's okay that we could talk about these things and even disagree on these things, and that's okay because we're still going to learn from each other. We can still grow with each other and grow from each other. And so I think it's extremely important to have that psychological safety, especially with your kids. I mean, like it can't be tampered down. Like they've got to be able to speak freely about things and be able to talk to you about stuff and be able to open up and not feel like they're being judged or that they're doing something wrong by bringing that up. All of a sudden you're gonna shut them down and they're never gonna want to talk to you about stuff. Finding Joe, I'm definitely going to have to look into that one for sure and watch that one with the kids. I think that's going to be, it sounds like it'll be a good one to watch for sure with them. Go ahead.
Yep. And I think to touch on the psychological safety is, to have a value system for your family, just like you have for a business, is to identify the things that like the Harmelings, these are our core values. Like you can believe in whatever you want to believe in, but this is what we do. And someday you have to be okay with like your kid being like, okay, Dad, I'm creating my own value system now, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And so that healthy unattachment, because I oftentimes see people like literally sacrificing their values just to meet their needs, and it's very dangerous. And that's where you get people that are working in jobs that they hate, and it's just like it's sad to see, but if you don't have your needs met, then it's really hard to think abundantly.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agreed. Now you mentioned, multiple times, and it's something that I harp on a lot on this podcast when I'm talking to folks, is like the that juxtaposition of your family and a business, right? And how those two are so similar. Funny enough, like right before I came in and recorded this, my core values that I have on this large canvas finally just arrived. I accidentally mailed it to my old house and wondered, where the heck is it at? Why is it not here? Well, you mail it to the wrong address and it won't make it to your house. What do you know? So I finally got it redone and sent over to us. But how important it is, because like there was a long time I'd look right up here on my whiteboard and I look at my core values for my company and I'm like, where do I look at in my house for my core values for my family? Like, we kind of wrote them down at the beginning of this year, but we've never put them somewhere. Like, why don't we have them posted? So now it's a nice canvas that I get to hang up on the wall. We get to look at it and know who this is. And then I can talk to my kids about the core values in my company as well, and kind of associate how I look at these things, both in business and in the world, or in our family. So as your kids are growing up, what kind of intentionality do you have in introducing them to like the business side of what you do, and kind of showing them that parallel between family and business, and how that all works? And like, I'll pause there. Like, what kind of interest do you have in exposing your kids to that sort of stuff?
10 out of 10, because I had to figure it out. You know, my dad, the last thing I wanted to do was be stuck in a warehouse, you know, brokering cheese for a living. That's where I say, like, and almost felt guilty for not wanting to carry on the family, you know, baton. Yeah. At the same time, and I'm like, dude, I need to be around people and energy, and I need it. Like, that's what charges me up. And speaking on stages and going on podcasts and, you know, getting uncomfortable. All these things like charge me up. And so I think the best thing that you can do for your family, like, I don't even understand how people don't bring their family into their business in today's day and age. And I, like, you know what I think about? I always think about, like, what did they used to do, like, when they were Native Americans, or like back in the day, like when there was like a Roman Empire, like, what did those families look like and do? Because they never broke up. They were highly protected, highly sophisticated. They had family crests. Like, who has a family crest now anymore? Yeah, nobody. Because it's like, it's almost like you don't want to make it, because what if the family breaks up? You know, and then like the crest, like, you know, like there's no family crests. Like, why is there not? It should be like this is the, you know, like creating a whole legacy and a heritage for your family. It's like, it's kind of evaporated. Like, there's no like, even kind of like, I don't know if you felt this, but like, even people's like love for like America has kind of like softened. It used to be like real, like, America, you know, like, and now people are like, oh, like, it's good, but, you know, and I love America, you know, I'm a patriot, but at the same time, it's like, there's still that energy shift that's softening that's been taking place. And so it's like, what is it about that we've lost in our modern traditions that has kind of escaped us from the rituals of the past, you know, that we've given up on because they worked? You know, like, all the inventions and like sciences and things that were invented a long time ago are still being used today. Like why is there nothing new being invented? You know, it's like really fundamentally invented. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah.
There's pick one, like the laws of physics. Like, you know, long ago that was like discovered, and like how there's no like new laws of energy, or like, you know, like there's no.
Yeah, and if there are, they're hiding it rather well, I tell you what. So
yes, yes.
So the like, I love having my kids be a part of all sorts of the stuff with the business side of the house, you know, and it's hard for me to kind of separate the two at this point, because, you know, like I homeschool, my kids are always around. I mean, two of them have already shown up on this call a couple times, right? So I want them to be as involved as they want to be. You know, so when you said you're 10 out of 10 inviting, you know, looking forward to having the family inside of the business, kind of what is, or at least introducing them into the business, what is your vision behind that, right? What sort of inclusion are they actually doing? And like, you know, what would be your long-term vision for your kids inside of the business?
So with the advancement of AI and hyper effective and efficient learning, let's be real. Nobody, like, when my kid's 18, he's not going to go pay $120,000 for a 4-year school. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Like, there's no chance. Now, I love institutional grade education. I think like that community, and like, you know, I played golf in college, so being a part of a team was like really cool. You know, I was in a fraternity, so like those experiences are like best experiences of my life. But like, the world is shifting so rapidly, and now we're learning things they're saying like 10 to 100 times faster, because we don't have to think about them. They're in our sphere before we even have to like learn how to do the thing. Like I remember when I was like, and I'm 36 again, but when I was even in high school, they're like, yeah, like you guys might be one of the last classes that actually have to use these calculators. Like, straight up, because it's like, why would you use the calculator if there's if you're never going to use it? Like, you know what I'm saying? But back then it was like, oh, well, just in case, Yeah. We're still just in casing it. And so it's just, the way that I see it happening is the word education in Latin, Adam, means to induce or bring out the best gifts in someone and then to make them viable. So I plan to educate my kid in like a Latin way in terms of like helping him discover his superpowers and then doing more of that, however that looks. And the integration piece is huge on that. It's like, okay, cool, you're really good at architecting things. Do you like metal or do you like nature? And it all comes down to creative questioning.
Yeah.
And then the biggest challenge that I'm up against, Adam, is finding the community. I believe that families should thrive in tribes. And so outside of GoBundance, so like I'm like my wife and I are hyper serious right now and focused on finding the best place to actually raise our kids. Because I grew up in a little Dutch village. There wasn't a lot of like, I think, if I look at my friends and the ones that have taken their lives or gone off bad paths, like it's because they've gotten involved in it's usually a friend. How do I say this without being? It's like it's usually a friend that introduces your kid to a bad thing. Yeah. And so there's no preventing that other than proximity, right? So the only thing that I can do as a dad is put my kid in the best environment possible so that he is able to navigate those friendships. Because let's be real, when you're young, the kid who's doing all the crazy stuff is the coolest kid to be around. Yeah. But he's also the most dangerous. And so there's this balance, and I don't know how I'm going to handle it yet, but I'm committed to just giving my kid the richest experience of life and family without having them get hurt. Now as you grow older and you have wisdom and you have the ability to discern and decide and choose, then the game changes a little bit, I think. Then you can be in places like cities where, well, whatever, if you see it or hear it, like you're able to respond versus react. But when you're a kid, you don't have these fundamental tools. Now, it's getting better because like people like me are teaching our kid at a young age how to, hey, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to be angry. That's a real human thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the more conversations we have like that with our kids and help them understand how to do all that, the better they're going to turn out. I explain to my kids all the time, like, you are the 5 people you hang around with most. I think it was a Jim Rohn thing, right? So I want to, tailor the people he's around, both the parents of the kids as well as the kids, right? Because the biggest influence on those kids is going to be their parents, and the biggest influence outside of me on my kids is going to be their friends. So if I can tailor that community to be like that, it's one of the reasons I love GoBundance, is because we have a bunch of people who have the same mindset, the same thought process as we do, right? So like I've been working on, and this is something that I've been talking to families in my church. I've been talking to other GoBundance families in the area, other homeschool families, to kind of get an idea of, all right, I'm really trying to stretch out and find those types of people to help my kid interact with them. I want to be very specific, just like you're saying, like very specific on the types of people that we're bringing my kids around, and that they're choosing to be friends with. I used to, when I grew up, I was a public school kid, and I was around a lot of, public school kids that were doing all the crazy stuff. And again, it was like you wanted to be the cool one that was next to the cool one, right? I was never going to be the cool one, so I was always trying to be at least next to the cool one. And that is not usually a great recipe for success, because the cool one is not usually the one doing the things that you actually want your kids doing. So like, how can I explain to my son what cool actually is, and what success actually is, and what growth actually is, and get them in that mindset early? I don't know. I don't know necessarily the right answer. Hopefully I'm doing something in the right way, right? But as
That's the best way, is to show them and tell them why. Like, Dad, why do you like to golf? Well, because it's outside. I get, it's a complicated sport. I get to hang out with friends. I get dedicated for business. I get to spend 4 hours with someone. I'm not trying to close them on the course, but I'm creating a relationship so that when we do have to navigate hard situations, we can actually have healthy discussion around it. So, yes, you're speaking my language over there. And have you heard of a guy by the name of Scott Donald?
Scott Donald? No,
Donald. Donnel. Scott Donald.
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. He would be a great person. He's been a friend of mine for years now. We've been involved in different enterprises, specifically in the health and wellness space. But he has an amazing group called Dinner Table. And it's literally teaching families how to run families like a business and how to raise kids that, take responsibility for their life. And so he runs workshops and has created a beautiful community so far. And like, it's an amazing thing. And it's like you said, it's like you're searching for community. This would be one of those communities that's rich with content, with ideas, with because it's like also you run out of things to do, right? You're like, okay, what else do I want to teach my kid? It's like, my wife and I love adventure and exploring, and so we travel a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is amazing, but it's also a lot. It's a lot time and money. So we got to have those things handled, or those things aren't possible. Yeah,
the travel thing is one of the reasons that I did homeschool, was so that I can travel and show my kids the world and all the different places that we get to go and things we do. That, boy, oh boy, if we were in a normal traditional school, like, we'd get yelled at all the time because we'd be gone way too much, and it was hampering our ability to do the things we wanted to do. That's for sure. And now, I'm even looking at now doing like little co-ops in my house, right? And have multiple kids, other families come over and do homeschool together, and, they can like have we're in a couple different co-ops already, but now, like, again, back to the intentionality of really putting the right kids in a spot with my kids, so that they can learn together, play together, grow together, maybe even go on trips together, that type of stuff, and really, become wiser. And I want to be able to teach some entrepreneurship to some of the kids too, because that's something that I'm growing my kids in and learning all of that stuff. So it's a lot of fun. But speaking of entrepreneurship, let's go over to your businesses a little bit and kind of chat a little bit more about what you have there. I mean, you've already hit on the health and wellness side of the house a little bit. We'll probably come back to that, but I'm very interested at the moment in the flying side of the house. So tell me a little bit more about that company and what your intention is behind it.
Yeah, of course. So at the moment, the company is called VeriJet, and so what we're doing as a company is really democratizing access to private aviation. And so there's been a huge transition. I don't know if you felt it, but there's been a huge transition of people that are starting to fly private more. And so we have created a airline, not a charter, an actual airline, where just like imagine Southwest, regional airline, you book a seat on a flight and you get there and it's simple, right? We're doing that for jets. And so we're using the world's safest, most efficient aircraft called the Cirrus SF-50 Vision Jet. Mm-hmm. Seats 4 adults and 2 kids, or 2 dogs, whatever you got, right? And so we're going to create this network. It's called the Small Aircraft Transportation System. NASA actually came out with it about 30 years ago. The reason it wasn't possible to activate was because of the machines, right? We didn't have the aircraft that could actually make the plan come to fruition, and they didn't have the technology that would make it efficient. So what we have is both. We have a proprietary technology called Coastal, which uses AI and algorithms to connect our network and make a flying way more efficient. And then we're using the world's safest, most efficient jet. And so between these two things, we have a remarkable business that is radically changing the world of private aviation, from cost to experience. So the hub and spoke system in America, which everyone can agree with, is pretty bad. I mean, it's not great. It's not bad. It's like right in the middle. It's like average at best, right? And you'd think with advancement of technologies and all the things, like it would get better.
Yeah.
It's actually getting worse. Right? And so We kind of entered the market in the right time, November of 2020, which is COVID. And so we're overwhelmed with demand and still are. And so now we're in a critical stage of our business where we're in a round, in our B round, raising to secure 100 more jets to expand with a bigger blueprint, essentially.
Okay.
And what's really cool about this is we can take our blueprint and just take it anywhere, like Europe, Dubai, the Caribbean,
Nice.
Puerto Rico. And so we just get people where they're going faster, and we're able to land at 5,400 airports in America versus 37.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, with that jet, that's a beautiful plane. But how did you come up with this, or you or your partner, or however it was? How did this idea come to fruition?
Like I said, we took a plan that NASA is like, hey, like the SATS program, the Small Aircraft Transportation System, is going to be the way of the future. We just don't have the aircraft or the technology to make it happen yet because it's just like too much, So you have to envision like 900 to 1,000 of these little jets. Just if you're like, hey, I want to go here. Okay, boom, you go there. It's like the price goes down as the amount of jets that we has increases because that's how efficient the network is, right? So it's not like we have more jets, the price goes up. It's like the opposite way. And so we built out this hyper-connected community. Think about like Tesla, Uber of the skies, right? That's kind of like what we are.
So this SAT system that was created by NASA, how did one of you guys stumble upon it, or is this something that you guys how did it was probably sitting on a shelf somewhere, right? And then somebody was like, oh, this sounds like a great idea.
Yeah. So my partner and the founder and CEO of our company, Richard Kane, has been in aviation his whole life and involved with SpaceX intimately and NASA, and helped with airplane designs, technology, operating systems, like you name it. In aviation, you ask a question about a plane, he'll have the answer like immediately. And so he's a hyper intelligent genius, quant, and knows numbers and things about technology and aircrafts and laws and regulations. It's a really complicated world. And so after I sold my last tech company, I was speaking at a conference, and that's where I met Richard. He was speaking and saying about the future of travel, and it blew my mind, like just completely. And so I'm like, after he spoke, I'm like, I'm going to help you do that. I don't know how, but I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And here we are today. So now I serve as the chief strategy officer. So his right-hand man, opening and expanding to new markets, creating strategic collaborations and partnerships with enterprises, companies, wellness spaces, sports teams, government agencies all across the world. And so it's been a really fun project, and we're super enthusiastic about even phase 2 of it, which was we'll start incorporating VTOLs, which is electrical vertical takeoff and landing. And so that'll take you from your driveway to the private airport, no traffic.
Wow.
And so we're taking the speed of travel from right now from 75 miles an hour door to door to 300 miles an hour door to door. So,
wow, that's crazy.
Giving people time back.
So when you're building something like this, or when you're thinking through something like this, I would venture to guess you didn't have a background in air transportation when you jumped into this. Is that an accurate statement? Correct.
No, yeah. I was just interested in it because it was a complicated project, and I was like, I love the harder the project, the more I just get excited. So I was like, this is right up my alley, and I've had the privilege of flying private for a number of years now, just through networks, relationships, and some of the enterprises that I've worked in, and so I'm like, man, it's a whole other world. You fly private one time, you're like, wow, people do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
People actually do this.
Yeah, that's really
cool.
So
that's cool because I'm like, I want to be able to go wherever I want, whenever I want with my family. This is the perfect jet to do it. This is an amazing opportunity to create something that's never been done.
Yeah. So how does one kind of start? There's plenty of people who have ideas, all right? And it's one thing to go from an idea It's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to put it into action. So how did you kind of go from, okay, I hear this guy's idea, and now you're coming in saying, hey, I'm going to help you put it to action, right? How did that kind of process go? And what were kind of the steps to building something like this that has not really been necessarily done before?
Well, I kind of hit the ground running, and I was I'm an all-in kind of guy. And, so I was like, when I first met with him, we negotiated for 3 months on what my position would be like and whatnot. And so first I was just like, hey, I'll bring people to the table. I'll get people flying. I'm going to bring in investors. I'm going to create awareness, kind of a hybrid marketing role. Didn't really have a title really, kind of BD type. And, I'll raise capital because that's like something that I love doing too, by the way. And so just whatever. And so as a result of that and doing a really good job, then I was promoted to CSO because he saw my passion and drive and enthusiasm for. It's not even about the planes, Adam. It's about giving people a different quality and experience of life. Mm-hmm. We're really an AI company that's masqueraded by an airline, so we could use any kind of airplanes that we wanted. Yeah, but these just happen to be the ones that we're going with because they're, the most efficient, safest jets in the world. The only ones that have parachutes. Yeah, and people love that. So.
Yeah, they're sweet little planes, that's for sure.
Just for perspective, outside of the whole parachute system and auto land feature, these jets burn between 40 and 80 gallons per hour, versus like 180 gallons an hour, which is like its closest competitor. So it's not even close. All the little details, like because of the safety, we only need one pilot instead of two. We only have one jet engine instead of two, because of the safety. Yeah. It has active turbulence suppression, so it feels real smooth when you're riding in it because it adjusts for turbulence.
That's crazy. So how many planes do you guys have now?
So we scaled up to 21 jets.
Nice.
We were overpaying on leases. We were getting as many jets as we could. And to go big, we had to go backwards. And so now we're at 5 jets, maybe 6 as of today, actually. And we'll be back up. We'll be actually up to 32 to 36 by the end of this year is the plan, is the target.
And are you guys?
And then once we get to 15, things start getting really exciting. I know it's not a big number, but that's when things like really start getting good for us.
Oh no, 15 is still. That's a lot that you can go all over the place with, right? Because they've got a good distance. So do you guys have? Are you guys finding places strategically throughout? Because I don't know, obviously, how this the SAT system works, and as far as like the logistics side of it, because it sounds like it's not hub, right? So you'll have jets in various different places. So kind of how does the system actually work?
Yep. So just perfectly said. We're just thinking about us like a satellite company with like 4 bases or maybe 5 or 6 eventually in America, maybe 10, Yep. Right now our headquarters are in Sanford, Florida, which is like just north of Orlando.
Yep. Right down the road from me. I'm going to have to go use you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least go check it out. We have a beautiful hangar and, at least 3 or 4 jets in it, pretty much, when they're not flying. And then we have a location in McKinney, Texas, and then we have a location in Las Vegas, and we'll put another location on the East Coast. Okay. I'm sorry, the West Coast, because these are and so we spread out. They're hybrid maintenance facilities / places for the planes to be, and so like truly think about it being like the Tesla Uber of the skies.
Yeah, that's
our jets are. We can't even meet demand, Adam. Like we like if you tried to book a flight right now, you couldn't get one. We're that oversold.
That's awesome.
So and then something that's critical for the business, which is a perfect example of my work, is we activated a very healthy contract with the #1 organ transplant company in America.
Okay.
And so we are now flying organs to save lives during night legs, which is like awesome because then, it's like guaranteed revenue as long as we can do the flights.
Yeah.
And so we have first right of refusal on all of their organ transplant flights.
Which company is it?
It's called Buckeye Transplants.
Okay. Yeah. So I know my sister-in-law does organ transplant stuff, right? So, and they're always looking for pilots and various stuff. And we're right here in Florida. So maybe we can connect after this and see if you guys can get another contract, because they said that that's one of the harder things. And I was chatting with her. I was like, well, maybe I could figure out a way to do, I don't know exactly like what you're saying, is kind of what I was telling her. I was like, if I could find a way to kind of get a couple pilots under my wings, get no pun intended, right? But kind of work through all of that process and be like on standby for you guys all the time. Like that would be awesome, right? But her company she works with is called LifeLink, and they, she covers a bunch of the stuff. So yeah, let's chat more offline as well. See if there's a way we can make something happen. And get you even more busy, right? So, because there's,
yeah, and we know all the containers fit, and we, because of the amount of airports that we can land at and the efficiency of the aircraft, we can and time is everything. As you and your sister know, and so the faster we can get this done, the more lives we can save. And there's not a lot of people that can do what we can do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a very niche thing to be able to do that and set up the way they are. So no, I love it. And since I again fly small planes, this is right up my alley. I love talking aviation and dealing with all of that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So as you're kind of growing this, right? How are you kind of projecting the growth of the company? I mean, you kind of already alluded to it a little bit of you're getting yourself to the 15 planes, then up to the 30. So how do you kind of look through this from a strategic lens? And this is just intriguing to me to try to understand how you kind of pull all this off. You have all these little hubs, or not hubs necessarily, but little home bases, right? And so if somebody puts in and say, hey, I want to go from here to here, and they plug it in, and then you're like, okay, well, we'll pick you up at that airport. You guys just send a plane out and go to that airport. So I'm assuming you guys are going to set up in different home bases that are within certain distances of those airports you want to land at. So I'm going off without letting you actually answer the question. So I'm going to pass it over to kind of how is the growth of this kind of being projected?
Yeah. Well, it's a quite simple strategy actually in terms of growth, because we have access to so many airports. Like they're unrestricted access. We have the golden ticket, which is our airline operator certificate, which allows us access to 5,400 airports. And so, Houston to Florida, it's a 3-hour flight. We can do it nonstop, right?
Yeah.
And so and then once we start filling in those gaps, right? Like, cause right now we're heavy on the East Coast, all the way from New York, all the way to Florida. And so those, as well as engaging with strategic partnerships with companies like Blade and companies that don't have their AOC, that need to use an airline to operate their aircraft, right? They need the license. And so we're all about collaboration over competition. I always tell people you can't compete with us because we want you to win too.
Yeah.
And so that's the energy that we lead with, because the company that Richard has created is not just an idea. It's a strategic innovation of tools and resources that are being put together to create a remarkable force.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. If you're really into buying businesses, and this is not an easy business to start because of the cost of capital.
Yeah.
All right. And so we're highly protected because of that. Our proprietary AI technology, our industry relationships, our client acquisition costs, our retention rate. Most of our customers become jet card holders, meaning we're not a membership model, but they'll buy a jet card because that'll lock in their hourly rate pricing. So 100 hours, for $420,000 or whatever it is. Instead of I'm going to book, it's dynamic pricing. It goes up to 6,500. You lock in your rate.
Yeah.
And so we sell those jet cards to people, to companies, and that's what people usually do after flying with us one time. They're like, okay, I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they become an investor, It's like that. That's what happens. Literally, I'm talking 90% of people.
Wow. That's crazy. And so how do people book right now? Do you guys have an app? Is it online, or how does the booking for that type of thing go?
Yep. Our app is being redeveloped right now. We, even had an article published because we Richard's involvement with IBM. So here's another thing. We're a small company, but we're backed by major players, right? And so Richard's work with IBM and developing our technology has, put us in a category of our own, to say the least, because we have this huge superhouse AI tech company that's backing everything what we're doing, and publishing articles about AI taking over the skies, which is us, essentially, and things like this. So all of that stuff is done on the back end using tools that are ours.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a little bit more digging into this one after the call, right? Because I'm rather intrigued by this concept. It's pretty fun.
You can just also go to VeriJet.com.
Yeah.
The whole point is to say you just put in your website or like where you're located. You hit the button, and then you say where you're going to go specifically, and it finds the best and nearest airports to where you are and where you're going.
Man, that's really cool.
So it's really good for if you're going to like Colorado to a small mountain town, because you can get right in there.
Yeah.
We have a place in Lake Tahoe. I flew like literally 7-minute drive. The other airport, an hour and 17 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, flying into to Reno just to go to Tahoe is terrible. You don't want to do that. So if you can fly into one of the small airports, it's a beautiful thing to be able to do. That's awesome. So I want to get into, if nothing else, for selfish reasons, the health and wellness side of the house, right? So you mentioned before the call, having that health and wellness for dads, and that's something that is near and dear to my heart. Obviously we're on the Biz Dad podcast, right? So being a dad is rather important to me, and as a prior military guy, I'm rather broken. And I've been working through a lot of health issues and all this stuff. And I tell people all the time, like, I need to get myself in better shape, because like it hurts for me to play with my kids, but I really look forward to playing with my grandkids. So I've got to figure out how to not make it hurt now, right? So tell me a little bit more about your journey in this health and wellness side of the house and kind of what you're doing with that business.
Perfect. So yeah, this idea started a long time ago, and it started with my own healing journey, to be honest. And so I'm one of those people, like, I just took matters into my own hands. I was put on all these drugs to help heal from like a traumatic brain injury from playing hockey and whatnot. And so I started taking all this medication, and it just made me feel totally crazy. But they're like, this is what you do if this happens to you. And so like, to them it was normal. And I was just like, something's not right here. And so long story short, I just was like, I ditched all that stuff and I just went completely natural. So I got into functional medicine, using a lot of different types of mushrooms for neurogenesis, neuroplasticity. I started bringing in nootropics, which are things that amplify cognitive functioning of the brain. And then I started just getting myself doing more primal things, getting outside, eating real food only, never eating literally I haven't eaten fast food. Not even Chick-fil-A since 2010.
That hurts me, because Chick-fil-A is amazing. God's chicken is like, woo. But okay, I think I can understand why, though.
It is. It would be if there's only actually 2 ingredients, but there's 150 ingredients in a piece of chicken.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We can all agree something's not right. Something's not right. So, getting really curious. This business is what I want to teach my kid. I got real curious on how I can become the best version of me and heal myself naturally, get myself back to the 12-year-old. Wow, it just got real dark outside. PTSD from the hurricane, and get back into like feeling superhuman again.
Yeah.
So now I've made that huge turn, and now I'm like on the other side, and I'm in regenerative medicine, so stem cells and things like that. But at the same time, I'm still integrating all the ancient practices. I teach people that, like, the future of healing is actually ancestral. And the future of medicine is ancestral. It's going back to your roots. It's going back to figuring out the things that fundamentally make you feel alive and that give you vitality. And the only way to do that, and the reason that this whole topic is popular in today's world, is because of the ability to test certain biomarkers and your overall wellness and longevity. And so thank God testing has come such a long way, because now you can go for a pretty reasonable cost and get yourself, tested. Like, how am I doing?
Yeah.
I could never be like, Adam, you need like, people do that so often, and you may be like, target marketed to because you're a veteran and, probably have dealt with significant trauma and PTSD and, starvation, all the things that you've done to your body. So it's like, how do you actually go beyond that back to like when you were a kid and bring that type of vitality back into your life? It starts with mindset and thinking that's even possible, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I start talking to people about, where do you spend your time the most? How much time do you spend outside? How much time are you spending touching the ground, the earth, Mother Nature, right? How much, like truly, I'm talking feet on the earth. I'm not talking like just outside. I'm like touching the earth, because fundamentally, all of this biotech and all this stuff is real sexy and cool. But what's really sexy and cool is that your body has the ability to heal itself, but it won't do that unless you get closer to nature, right? It won't get, because we're electromagnetic beings, and we get charged from the earth's magnetism and the sun's frequency. And so without those two things, and getting dialed in onto those two things and understanding how those things impact your overall health and wellness, not much is going to change. Something to understand and be mindful about is that being inside is 75% roughly more toxic than being outside. And it's like, why is that? It's like, you look around, everything's artificial. There's coatings, there's things that off gas, there's mold, there's trapped air and energy and artificial lighting and electromagnetic frequencies that are violently robbing you from your health. And so you got to be serious about the spaces that you spend the most time in, right? And so having an air filter in your home that gets rid of those impurities, so you're breathing clean, oxygenated air. I mean, here's another simple goal. Oxygen equals energy. So if you're not getting enough oxygen in your life and into your body, you're going to develop disease and illness and sickness. Not gonna, but likely that something will happen. Yeah. So number one is air. Number two is water. Just think about the elements and how you can incorporate them. What kind of water are you putting in your body? Are you drinking tap water? If you are, you're likely poisoning yourself unintentionally. There's heavy metal and toxins and free radicals and the contaminants that are in our water that we're just pouring down our throats because we need to be hydrated. Well, dude, we're like literally poisoning ourselves. So I get real serious. I don't take any clients anymore unless we can. And it's like when I used to do financial advising, I didn't even talk to people about investing unless I had the insurance conversation with them first. Like, boom, you're dead. What happens to all your stuff? If the room got quiet and nobody knew what was going to happen, like I can't talk to you about investing or doing anything sexy with your money until we talk about this, like about the tough stuff. And so same thing with health and wellness. Like, let's just talk about the basics before we start talking about red light therapy or pulse electromagnetic field therapy or stem cells. Let's go back. Let's go way back. And let's get your spaces cleaned up energetically.
I think about that often as I'm sitting here in a room that's got like 4 computer screens, multiple hard drives, external things going to town all over the place, all these crazy lightings and headphones in my ears and on my head all the time, and like there's just constant things bouncing around. I mean, phones and iPads and all the stuff is just destroying me, and I'm sitting in an office all the time. And I was just talking to another GoBro, Adrian Akai, and about like all of these, because I did some blood tests and I was chatting with Merrick Health, and they had all these like a bajillion recommendations for me to go do, and I was like, there's got to be a better way than some of the like just taking a bunch of pills, because I've been doing everything I can to get rid of all the medications that I have been taking because because the government loves to throw me on a bunch of medications. Thank you, military and VA. And last time I went in, like my doctor was like angry at me. He's like, "Well, when was the last time you took that?" I said, "I don't take that anymore." I said, it doesn't do what I'm wanting it to do, and I don't want to put medicine in me anymore. I'm tired of it. And he was like, "Oh, well, let's get you to slowly get off of this stuff." I was like, "I can't. I know I'm done. I just can't keep doing this, And here I am now going to a doctor. They have all these pills they want me to take. I'm like, all right, wait a minute, what is happening here? But really, we mentioned it a little bit, you and I, before we started recording. It's like I need to get rid of all the garbage in my house. Like, to me, like that is almost that beginning stage of like, before I start working on my finances, like what happens when I get hit by a bus? Do we have the stuff in place? Like that's the last thing you want to think about, but it's like what happens? Like you need to have a good foundation. And right now my diet foundation is horrendous. So when you're working with a client, when you're working with a dad like me, how do you get them to get rid of some of those old habits they have? Like what kind of conversations do you guys have to be able to say, hey, this is how, well, thank you, buddy, for combing my beard. This is like, this is why you should be doing these things. And these are the things that you need to be doing to get your especially like diet, because that's a huge problem in today's society. So what kind of conversation do you have with that?
I just say, look at your kid, and I say, how long do you want to be in that kid's life?
How long do you want me in your life, buddy?
And what kind of energy do you want to? What kind of energy do you want to show up with?
Yeah,
And you've done a tremendous job, despite all the pain and trauma you've dealt with, to show up big for your kids. But there's it's so easy to play small. It's just so easy to go back. And the reason is because your old self is like clawing you to come back. It's like, no, don't grow and have a breakthrough. Yeah. Like, keep taking me like the old medicine. It's like, no, you need me. It's like, no, actually I don't. And that's why I try to get people real simplified. I'm like, how do you do it? You literally go in your fridge,
throw it all
with
away.
Your wife, you have to, and you just literally start throwing stuff in the trash. Yeah. I don't care how much it costs. If it's not just a real food or something that brings you complete joy, like it's got to go. And you got to build new habits and patterns. Like, speaking of all the, how do we do it right in today's modern day, being surrounded by all this energy and artificial lighting and stuff. Like, there's tools, Adam. This is one of those tools. This is called a quantum infinity block, and it harmonizes the frequency of energy in a space. And it's charged. It's metallic metals that are charged with frequencies of energy that protect me from what is in my sphere. But it's called your biofield. Mm-hmm. What you're doing with your kid right now is remarkable. Like, most dads don't touch their kids enough and love them and hold them, and so they don't feel that fatherly energy. To you and me, it's normal. Mm-hmm. To so many dads, it's not. It's like, oh, you get a hug every now and then.
Yeah. Not with these guys. It's constant.
Human connection and community are critical in terms of longevity. But nothing is more important than drinking filtered, structured water. And if you can get access to that where you live, then do it. Otherwise, there's tons of recommendations that I have. That's what I do for people. Like, oh, what do I do? I'm like, this is a whole another hour-long conversation, because I need to tell you why. I need to tell you what you're going to learn about when you're going to start Googling stuff. Yeah. I need to eradicate the myths, I want to hear what you think about it, and then from there we develop a game plan and a strategy. But it really starts with getting rid of, you got to get rid of stuff that's just in your way. You got to remove the friction, as I call it.
Yeah. And it's one of those, again, if it's there, I'm going to eat it. If it's, and I was explaining to my son, even like the way that they, like potato chips or any number of things, those processed foods that are inside of a package, right? This morning when we were on our way to that golf event, it was this like pub mix with pretzels and all sorts of stuff from Sam's, right? But I was telling him as I was eating it, and I was telling him before we started recording, like I'm telling him as I'm eating it, like, this is garbage food. It's terrible for me. It's terrible for us. But here I am sitting here eating it, and they design it so that you want to eat more of it. So that like you put it in your mouth, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, now I totally need more of that. Like, and I don't remember who I was listening to yesterday. I want to say it was on the All In podcast. The guy I don't remember. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was a phenomenal podcast. But it was like that's one of the reasons you want that second chip even more than you wanted that first one. Because that first one was just like, oh yeah, I want a chip. And then you get a chip. And then your body is now telling you, your stomach is telling you, your brain is telling you, your whole body is like, no, you need that second chip. It's not just hey, I want to eat a snack. And it doesn't satiate you. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't fill you with anything other than garbage calories. And it's like, man, oh man. But when I eat when I eat a delicious steak with some great asparagus on the side, and that makes me feel so good. But for some reason we go back to the same garbage over and over again. And I don't, I don't know, it makes me feel like there's something wrong with my brain. I'm like, what is wrong with me that I keep doing all of this garbage? Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to have boundaries around food, and you have to say, I am going to only eat real food, period. Like, I will starve myself if I have to. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, people think like I'm crazy. I'm like, I travel with my food because I am never going to rely on an airport to eat food. And sometimes I'll get it in the lounges and things like that. But like, I'm not going to rely on someone else to take care of my biology. Like, this is my responsibility.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Oh.
Might have lost power there for a second.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be the ups, huh?
Yeah. Just had a hurricane. I actually, thank God, just repaired the roof this morning. So
wow.
I'm praying that it worked.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it was that was a craziness over there, like how that all went down. My buddy had just moved from Houston, and he moved to Arkansas, and he's just moving into his house here soon. And I was like, I sent him a message. I was like, golly, like what a crazy time for you to move, like right before the hurricane came through. But I'm happy to see that you are up and running and things are going smoothly. But no, I love what you're doing with both the aviation side and the health side. I mean, those are two things that I am passionate about, but suck at both of them. Like, I'm not good at keeping my health the way I want it to do, and I don't fly nearly enough. So maybe you and I need to be on more conversations, and I'll be better on my health side of the house, and I'll fly more. Right? So
there you go. Yeah, we all boats rise in high tide, right? But I think a lot of this is mindset, Adam.
Yeah.
Like, even just hearing you say, like, I suck at both of them, like, you should never talk to yourself like
you're
that.
right. You're right. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I won't let it happen. I
tell that to my kids all the time too. And it's like, no, the words we use have power, right? And you know, the things we tell ourselves have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for. Oh, I think I lost you. Probably saw Brett had a bit of a power outage. So now we are going to come back in here, kind of wrap it all up together. So welcome back, Brett. Happy that the lights are back on over there. It was funny, like at the recording, I don't know if by the time it's done editing, it'll be there, but you saw the lights actually shut off on your side. And then it stopped. I was like, all right, well, there he goes. It's just this frozen, lights off, sitting in there in a dark room all by yourself. So, but yeah, let's go ahead. I mean, we're about to wrap it up anyways, but thank you very much, Brett, for jumping on. It was absolutely awesome to kind of chat with you, get to know you a little bit, and learn a little bit more about what you have going on. If people wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Best way to get in contact with me is either through LinkedIn or Instagram. Just my name, Brett Harmeling. Pretty simple.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have links to that, plus some of the other socials in there. But yeah, thank you so much for jumping on. I absolutely am thrilled about what you're doing. Aviation and health are two of those things, again, that I need to keep jumping on more and more. I enjoy when I feel good, and I enjoy flying around and learning more about flying and aviation and all this stuff. So absolutely love what you're doing. If there's any way that I could be of service for you, let me know. I'd love to be able to help in whatever I could. But thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you again, Brett, for jumping on. Please like, subscribe, comment, reach out to Brett if he could be of any service to you, as I'm sure he can be. And thank you, everybody, and we'll see everybody on the next show.